in the White House. This is where the president works. The president sleeps and lives in the White House, but he works here in the Oval Office. This is the way it looked the last day of President Reagan's days in office. He was in the office by himself. On his last day, in walked Colin Powell. Colin Powell said to him, "Today, Mr. President, the world is at peace," which was nice. If you notice the carpet, the colors, it's the Southwest motif. President Reagan loved horses, loved the Southwest. If you look across the room, you'll see saddle. It's a saddle collection. It's a depiction of the Western saddle as it came through time. The interesting thing was President Reagan did not ride Western, he rode English, which means there was no horn on the saddle. Yes, ma'am? I'm going to tell you all about that. So, the items on the desk are from President Reagan. The chair behind the desk was President Reagan's when he was governor of California. He brought it down with him from Sacramento to Washington. The interesting thing, though, is when he sat behind the desk, his knees were hitting the drawers. So if you look at the bottom of the desk, there's about a 3-inch rise to the desk so he could fit his knees under the desk. The desk is really the star of the room. There was a ship, an English ship called the HMS Resolute, Her Majesty's ship Resolute. The crew tried to get from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. It went up into the Arctic. It got stuck in an ice floe, and the crew abandoned the ship. An American crew found the ship. When the ice floe relieved the ship, they took the ship back to Boston, they retrofitted it, and they gave it back to the Queen of England. The Queen of England was so impressed with that when they decommissioned that ship years later, out of the timbers, the wood of the ship, they carved that desk. It's the only desk like it. There are 2 other desks that were carved from the timbers, but they're not as big as this desk. This is a replica. The real desk is being used by President Trump today. Obama. I was about to say Obama. President Trump today. Not every president has to use the desk in the Oval Office. Most do. Some take it up to the private quarters. If you notice, there's a panel in front of the desk. That panel was not there when the desk first was presented to the president. It was put on there because we had a president called Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt had polio, and he had irons on his legs, or he was in a wheelchair, and he didn't want anybody to see the leader of the free world like that. So they built that panel for him. Okay? It's the only place I'm going to get to it in a second. The only place in this whole library where the eagle's head, remember we talked about the eagle's head before? The eagle's head is facing the arrows of war. It was carved that way, but since then we've turned the eagle's head to face the olive branches, which is peace. The door on the other side of the room leads out to the president's private quarters where he'd have lunch with his vice president. The door without the molding is where if you were a visitor to the Oval Office, you'd come in and greet the president that way. The door you're about to go out led out to the president's secretaries and his cabinet members' offices. And the door we came in actually led out to the Rose Garden. The picture above the mantel is George Washington. President Reagan liked this because it shows George Washington in his military uniform and without his white headgear. Yes, you see the jelly bellies. President Reagan loved jelly bellies. What was your question, sweetie? Do you have a question? Behind the door. What's behind door number 2? Right. Any other questions? All right. This is an exact replica.